My first job out of college was with a nonprofit working against human trafficking in Thailand, and so that's where I ended up first. And so I kind of dove into the deepest of darkest issues. If this is an issue in like a very specific part of the world on a very specific population, how can I start to broaden my lens and my empathy towards other issues, towards other communities, and how can I do that in the broadest, most powerful way possible?
Ever wondered how big brands can advocate for social causes? Shannon O'Malley talks about her experiences at Nike and the crossover of that passion and expertise into social activism. Please welcome Shannon O'Malley to the RebelRebel Podcast.
This episode is brought to you by the Redline Report by Brandjitsu. What story is your website telling and how is it telling it? Are you just talking about yourself or are you connecting with your customers on a more meaningful level? Find out at brandjitsu.com/redline. If you feel so inclined, you can support the show by like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your favorite podcast. Also, you can go to patreon.com/RebelRebelPod. The Rebel Rebel is a show dedicated to creative rebels and entrepreneurs all over the world. It's for those people who think audaciously and act courageously in service of making the world a better and more interesting place. Welcome to the Rebel Rebel. I'm your host, Michael Dargie, and somewhere across the world, I've got Shannon O'Malley. Shannon, how the hell are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. How are you doing today?
I'm doing so good. Thank you. And thanks for making the time today. This is great. If you could catch us up, Shannon O'Malley, where are you in the world right now?
Yeah, as of this week, I am in Brooklyn, New York.
Nice.
I have been trying to be based here for a while. I've been spending some time on the West Coast over the last couple of months, but I'm back in Brooklyn and loving it.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love New York. It's so good. So, so to further this, what are you doing in New York? Like, what's happening in Shannon O'Malley's world right now? What are you doing?
Right now, let's see. As of this week, I've wrapped up a couple contracts. I've been traveling a bit for some work. I moved out to New York a couple years ago just to kind of get more saturated in the field that I'm in, which is the intersection of brand and social justice. And it's been an amazing journey so far. I went freelance about 4 years ago, and so really just kind of jumping at different opportunities that further big ideas, big missions in a creative storytelling capacity.
Wow. Okay, so talk to me about brand and social justice. Like, what is that?
What is that? I try to
Are you a superhero based in Brooklyn?
Maybe. Yeah, so I started my career out in the nonprofit sector, and looking back in hindsight, I'm like, oh, there is a through line around storytelling via documentaries, via brand storytelling, via visual arts, and really how to use the power of brand and storytelling to make big ideas accessible to folks. I quickly went into corporate philanthropy at Nike, which does
nice.
Brand at the best level you can think of.
They're a big one.
They're okay.
Yeah.
And really had the opportunity to use their brand values and guidelines of how do you use brand to market shoes or athletic wear or athletes in general to a big idea, and was working on a movement called the Girl Effect, which was investing in adolescent girls, particularly in the global South, as an untapped resource for economic empowerment. So not really anything specific to do with athletics, but it was funded by Nike. So we had access to all the brilliance of brand marketing and trying to apply those values to a big idea, which was investing in adolescent girls.
Holy.
I'll pause. There was a sigh.
Oh, that's a big bite.
Yeah.
What and I just want to ask this because it's popped into my head. What makes your time with Nike, what makes, man, what am I trying to ask? What is it that makes what they do and what you did with them memorable? What is like some of their values that they bring to the table that, makes that deep impact?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, particularly coming out of the nonprofit space, working in a foundation setting, and I didn't know the difference in my early 20s, the difference between a nonprofit and a foundation, but
Right.
Nonprofits are required to do their own fundraising, and that takes up like a large scope of their time and also drives deliverables. Whereas if you're working for a foundation that's like private money, where you have often like bigger budgets because it is more from a philanthropic
Sure.
space. And I've found it to be a lot more creative. I've found the risk taking to be a lot more accepted. And so that was one big learning I had was, oh, wow, it's amazing to do this mission-driven work when I don't have to necessarily be accounting every dime and justifying how I'm spending it. And working for an institution like Nike, who understands the power of brand and marketing, we were just be able to do a lot more and faster. And so some of the major things we did were going in country, on the ground, working with organizations, nonprofits, governments, who were designing within 4Girls, but doing it in a very dry and not creative way. So being able to run these workshops that were bringing girls into the room so policymakers could hear directly from them, but then also showing them how to do brand in a way that made their work more powerful, and always including elements in like a 3-day long workshop of, yes, it's important to do policy. Yes, it's important to do advocacy work. And here's how to do it better if you really focus your time and resources to getting brand communications right, and how much more powerful that can be.
Wow. And I again, I got to ask, why Shannon? Like, what happened? Where did you zig when others zagged, and how did you get into this?
Yeah, my mom asks me this all the time. She's like, "Why can't you just care about like puppies? What is happening?" So I guess like to pull the curtain back, my first job out of college was with a nonprofit working against human trafficking in Thailand. And so that's where I ended up first. And so I kind of dove into the deepest of darkest issues. And from there really was taken by like, okay, if this is an issue in like a very small, not very small, but a very specific part of the world on a very specific population, how can I start to broaden my lens and my empathy towards other issues, towards other communities, towards other systems, and how can I do that in the broadest, most powerful way possible? And so moving to Nike was one way to do that because we were focused on girls globally, and we had the creative resources to go after that. And my career has since moved. That was a cool decade ago at this point. Not to fully date myself, but
it's been a minute, as the kids say.
Yes, as the kids say. But I do think, I don't know, there's been some intuition in how I've designed my career that is always putting a bigger mission or purpose as the North Star. And I haven't always been sure how I'm going to pay the bills or how I'm going to pay off my student loans, but it has worked out in a really beautiful way. Like, I didn't go to college expecting this to be my career. Like this, I didn't know this existed. And it's been amazing, especially having enough ground behind me now to look back and be like, oh, there was that through line. And yeah, I'm excited for where it's taken me and where I'm headed next.
No kidding. So, do you mind if I go back further in Shannon's life?
Yeah.
Because I'm super hyper curious about what you were like as a kid and if you were always wired this way.
Oh, I'm also in therapy, so that's helpful because I've been doing some of this work. Like, how did I get here? What am I doing?
Yeah.
My parents are wonderful and kind and nice to me now. I think at the time they're like, why can't you just get a normal job? Why can't you just go work at a bank?
Yeah.
I think as a kid, I was always pretty driven. I'm the oldest of 4. My parents had 4 of us within 5 years. So it was like 4, but also we're like our own little tribe.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think I've always had a little more drive, a little more oomph to my step than most. I didn't realize that or recognize that as different, but yeah, even starting in like elementary school, like, okay, I'll sign up for class president or whatever that leadership role is, was always very active. Sports was a big part of my upbringing. So I think that instills a different level of discipline and attention and focus that drove me all the way through college.
What was your sport?
Yeah. Volleyball was my first love. And then I played lacrosse through college.
Oh, Lacrosse is so kick-ass.
It's
And you
pretty
have
fun.
all your own teeth? Like,
They're there. I think wasn't
oh,
hockey, so we're good.
yeah, okay, that's fair. Yeah, lacrosse is badass.
Yeah, it was fun.
That's wicked. Very cool. So explain to me what happens in Shannon's life now. Like, what's your current mission specifically?
Current mission. Yeah. So I went freelance about 4 years ago, and it really has opened up the space for me to pursue different ways to do this work in the world. And I would say my sweet spot is storytelling for social justice issues, and that manifests in a variety of ways.
Okay.
I've worked in the entertainment space. How do you bring these stories to life in an authentic way with dignity for the people who you're trying to represent? And that includes bringing folks with lived experience into the creative process. So not an extractive, transactional, like, oh, you have a cool story, let's make a film about it, but including, like I said, my career was started in the human trafficking space, and that has also been a through line over the last 10 years, no matter how many times I've tried to get out of it. But like having survivors in the writer's room or reviewing scripts, and educating.
Man, that must be hard.
Yeah, but like educating the creative team in a way that isn't like, oh, this is my story, here's how to tell it right, but here's the bigger issue, here are the things you need to think about. And if you're casting a pimp, for example, like, here's what's going to happen at a social and societal level if you cast them to look a certain way, and things like that. So really looking at the power of narrative change through storytelling via media, and how people behind the scenes have quite a bit of responsibility to tell these stories right and with dignity.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And it's one of those things I don't know that the rest of the world appreciates
or thinks about ever.
Yeah, but like, again, like how you treat somebody who has, as you say, lived experience, which I think is a beautiful way of framing that, and treating it in a meaningful way that's respectful and still tells the story in the way that it needs to be told. But wow, hats off to you.
Thank you.
That's some good work.
Yeah.
Hot
yeah.
damn.
So that's been one part of my kind of freelancing for the last couple of years. I also feel like, I don't know if you experience this in the work that you do or in a creative space, but I tried out the title of strategist for a few years, and no one knows what it means, right? So
it's like consultant.
yeah, right, exactly. I'm a social impact consultant. Like, what does that actually mean? And so strategy, I think, especially in the creative space or in the advertising space, plays a different role than I think in more the activist space that I've been in. So I've tried that title on. I think strategy manifests itself in production a lot. So I've played project management roles, I've played writer roles, I've played straight producer roles, trying to bring ideas to life in different ways. A lot of my work is communications based, so sometimes that is just straight grant writing or comm strategy or website copy.
What's your hot take on AI content creation right now?
Oh, don't get me canceled. I've had mixed conversations, and I feel like
it's a hot topic.
It is. And I work with an incredible copywriter who I think her and I both agree that it is a tool that if you know how to ask the right questions and use it in a way that benefits, like, you have to be smart to use it right.
Like a research assistant.
Yes, exactly.
Off to the side.
Yeah. So I find myself, if I do use ChatGPT, it's to get a first draft done. Like, let me just do a download and see what they come up with. And that's the same as me working with a writer, and then I come in and edit. So that's been really helpful in moving some work along just faster, especially I am mostly solo. I bring on different consultants for different projects, and curate my teams that way. But if it's just me, I find AI, specifically ChatGPT, helpful in just moving some drafts along, because I think my biggest barrier is looking at a blank page and be like, oh, where do I start?
Flashing cursor.
Yeah. But I also, I've been listening to some conversations around like the human impact of it, and we don't see that side of it, right? Like I just pull up my browser, type in a question, and get to benefit from this free platform, but it's not free. There's human consequences, there's environmental consequences that I don't think we've really had visibility to. So that's something I'm curious about. Like, I think this is a benefit for me personally, but how is this potentially harming our environment, humanity?
Yeah.
Just all those light questions.
Yeah, just so topical.
Right.
You never go below the surface here, Shannon. Just kidding. But I feel the same way, or I feel similarly, and I've reconciled a lot of this with, like, I use Photoshop, for example, and I use Photoshop for color correcting and auto correcting levels, which used to involve, some poor schmo really caring about every value on the histogram. But now it's a hotkey. And actually, it's been a hotkey for a decade plus, right? Like it's, so that took colorist jobs away in some aspects. And same thing with the audio editing that we're doing. We used to do reel-to-reel stuff, and now we can do some really dope stuff digitally. So yeah, I'm not overly, I don't know that this is monumental, but it's leading that way. Like this is a huge step for humanity, I think. So great on you for having that question in the back of your head.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Buckle up. What happens for you in the future? And I don't know what future we're talking about, if it's like tomorrow or if it's like several years from now, but where do you think you're headed?
Yeah, such a great question. And there will always be curveballs. There will always be the universe laughing at my plans, for sure. I think I'm finally hitting my, I don't know if pace in consulting, it's hard, right? You have like really full-on sprint times where you have more clients than you thought you were going to be able to handle. And then you have really quiet times. And so I feel like in the first part of this year, I took on a little bit more than I was expecting, but was also still operating in such a scarcity mindset of like, people are still wanting to pay me to do this. Like, that's not right. Like, and just not being afraid to say no. And also I feel like the work that I am privileged to be a part of, like, I don't want to say no. Like, I get paid for this, but it's not to say I wouldn't do this for free. Like, it's that energizing to me.
Wow.
And so I think, to answer your question, there's like a short term and a long term. I think the short term for the rest of the year is how do I sustain myself and sustain the work that's being asked of me, and also being a little bit more diligent in my time, especially as a consultant. I'm like, oh, this project's only just 5 or 10 hours a week. I can find that somewhere. Which one of the reasons I moved to consulting was because I actually was at an agency doing similar work, but it was not, it was still an agency. And so it was very corporate, very dominated by like perfectionism. And there was no space to hold some of the vicarious trauma that I was absorbing by working with survivors or working in these hard issues. And I wasn't able to prioritize my mental health. And so one of my big pivots was, let me do this on my own terms so I can prioritize the flow of the work that I'm doing. And if I am working on a heavy issue, like, let's create more space in my days and my weeks, or balance it with like a fun lifestyle project or something like that.
Smart.
But now I'm like kind of getting back into the grind, and I love it. So yeah, for this next year, especially in the United States, we have like a very critical election coming up. So a lot of my work is focused on human rights, especially domestically. So feeling committed to doing that work, but also balancing it with some other client needs. So that's, I think, like the near term, like figuring out how do I take care of myself in a year that I know is going to be pretty full on.
Yeah.
And then long term, I don't know. Like, I was actually having a conversation with a friend this weekend about this. He was asking, like, are you going to hire anyone? Are you going to bring on a team? And I find that I don't know how to do that when it's like all kind of in my brain.
Yeah.
I've learned how to delegate over the years. I've been able to manage people in different capacities. And I do run a company where I can bring on other consultants, but I don't know what scaling this looks like yet, but I would like to figure it out.
It's on the list.
Yeah.
Oh, that is so cool. Talk to me about Brooklyn.
Brooklyn's great.
Yeah. Do you hang out on the stoop and watch the world go by? Like,
I wish I was living. So when I first moved out here, I had a super generous friend who had a room available, and I had been living on the West Coast for almost 10 years.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I think I need a change, but I'm not fully committed to, I had just started my own business. So I was like, I can't move to the most expensive city in the US and think this is like a good idea. So
Yeah.
I had a really generous friend offer a room in her house for like month to month. And we were living in Flatbush and Little Caribbean, and it was so fun.
Wow.
We had a yard, which is unheard of for New York. And I got a hammock back there. We had a grill, and you would just hear like Afro beats reverberating off of all the buildings in the backyard, like at any time of day, any day of the week. It was just so lively. And I've lived internationally, particularly in my early 20s. I've traveled extensively. So being back in a neighborhood that has culture and diversity, and I walk to the grocery store and I hear 5 different languages, I feel like that's been the energy I needed to kind of spice things up in my life. And it's been really good. We didn't have a front stoop, but we had a backyard.
That's awesome. I think about New York fondly, and I've been to New York once, and
okay, we need to make another trip back.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I don't think we spent any time in Brooklyn, though. We wanted to, but we were only there for a short period of time on we were doing a film festival.
Okay.
So we had like 3 days. But we need to spend more time in New York, and it's such a beautiful city, and the people there are just so amazing and
totally
just radical across the spectrum. But
Yeah.
helpful. So helpful. Maybe sometimes too helpful, but helpful.
It's so funny because growing up, like I grew up in California, and there was just always the stigma that like people from New York are rude. And that's not it at all. Like I find them to be just direct. You know where you stand. And if you are like taking too long ordering a bagel, they're going to tell you to move along. And that's great. Like keep it like, yeah, I really enjoy the energy here. And when people ask you a question, I can recall like even when I would visit, one of my best friends is born and raised here. And so it's been nice to be close to her and her new family. And I just remember coming to visit and having someone in line just strike up a conversation, and they're genuinely wanting to know how you're doing. Whereas the West Coast is so lovely, and I'm from there, so like I get it, but it's everyone's like too flowery, like too nice, and so you don't know if it's like, do you genuinely want to know how I'm doing, or are you just trying to like move along in your day, and I'm just like a road bump that you need to get over right now. Yeah.
Amazing. Do you eat pizza?
Oh my God, yes. Pizza is like part of my religious spiritual practice, so that's been a huge highlight of being out here.
Okay, yeah, good. I was gonna say, what's the Brooklyn pizza place? What's the one place that you recommend?
If you can get in, Lucali's. It's Beyonce's favorite.
Okay.
But it's BYOB. You have to get there. I think they open at 4, and you have to write your name down on a list and then just show up. And you have like a limited number of time you can like sit and enjoy your meal. But hands down, the best pizza I've had in New York.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. So great. You mentioned walking to the grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
And hearing 5 languages. What's your thing that you need to go get at the grocery store that you're going to bring back to your place and be like, oh, this is the best. Living here is kick ass.
I will say I am big on rice, and fish. And my former roommate is from Korea, and she would always say, like, Shan, you're more Asian than I am. But I feel like that is my staple. Like, she introduced me to a rice cooker and my life was changed. So that is like not a unique New York experience. However, it's like something that I've just come to embrace since being here, and just all the different types of vegetables you can get and spice up your rice in different ways. Yeah, I don't think that's the answer you're expecting, but that's
I throw these out because they jump into my brain, and I don't know, I'm curious about the weirdest things. It's like,
great.
Yeah, that's just so let's just say, for the sake of argument, that Shannon's walking down the street in Brooklyn towards her favorite supermarket.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you've got like this cool multi-use shopping bag. I don't know. Maybe it's made of hemp. I don't know.
Sure.
And, the people are driving by honking their horns, and, there's people talking all these different languages, and you're there, and we'll say that it's late spring, and there's leaves on the trees, and, there's the cacophony of, Brooklyn around you. What is the one thing as you're walking down that street that you're just like, oh, I wish the world knew this one thing? What is that one thing that you wish the world knew?
I could take this like a really dark place.
This is your platform, and it could be dark and heavy. It could be light and fluffy, whatever you want it to be.
Yeah, I'm going to bring it to a more positive space. I feel like the world in itself right now is just heavy all around, and I wish people knew a lot of things.
Yeah.
But one thing that I am channeling for myself, and I think applies to all different people at all different walks of life, is like, you are stronger than you think you are, and you know more than you think you do. That would be it.
That's awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Thank you for that question.
Shit. I feel really good about that. That's nice. Appreciate that. What is Shannon's guilty pleasure? What do you do just for you? What do you do to sort of refill the Shannon vibe?
Yeah. So I've been really into puzzles as of late. Like, it's not something I have time for, but a puzzle, a glass of wine, and jazz music is like my ideal Friday night.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so talk to me about puzzles. I don't know a lot about them.
I can't say that I'm a connoisseur of any type. It's just like something that is mindless and keeps me focused. But if there's another person, like, I've found a couple friends who have indulged in my puzzling, and you're able to be like active, but also, I think during the pandemic, for example, I was really big on audiobooks, but I kept getting distracted if I had my phone. So I would like play cards or dice. So I was keeping my hands busy while listening.
Right.
So I think puzzling in the same way is like, I need to just not be looking at a screen. But I want something to do while I'm like listening to music and enjoying a meal. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. There's a company here in Calgary. So we're up in Calgary, Alberta, Canada,
Amazing.
just right in the foothills. And there's a company called Stumpcraft. I'll give them a shout out.
Yeah.
So they do these kick-ass puzzles, and I'll put the link down in the show notes here, but I didn't know this about puzzles, and I don't know the level of puzzles that you do, but basically they've got puzzles within puzzles.
Oh my God.
And so, yeah. So basically you can, snap pieces together, and it creates a whole little puzzle that then gets fit inside the bigger puzzle, which is part of another bigger puzzle. Like, it's insane. Like, who thinks of this stuff?
Yeah. I'm probably your rookie puzzler. Like, I'll find it at a CVS. Like, oh, this one has pretty colors. Okay.
Yeah. Crazy. Oh, that's cool. Yeah. All right. So, I'm trying to think of it. There's a name for these puzzles within puzzles. Somebody will send me a note being like, "Oh, Dargie, it's blah blah blah. It's a flim flam or whatever." But it's a whole thing. I didn't know about it.
Yeah. I had no idea. Mind blown.
Yeah. Red or white wine?
Red wine.
Red wine. Okay.
I don't discriminate, but I prefer red.
Okay. Dark and meaty, like Malbec-y Shiraz, or is it light and happy?
I feel like it depends on the mood. I would say love a Malbec, I've been recently getting into more like French wines, like Beaujolais,
Oh,
like a little more effervescent. So that is more on the light side, but
yeah.
yeah.
All right. Good to know.
Hmm.
And jazz. What's your go-to jazz?
Go-to is Terrace Martin. Are you familiar with him at all?
No, but I'm
Oh,
gonna
he's
look him
amazing.
up.
Yeah, he's LA based. He's produced a lot of music that you probably know. Yeah, he's phenomenal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Wicked. So you talked about your perfect Friday night. Do you and you talked about
Puzzles.
audiobooks.
Yeah.
Do you like
Do you have fun? Do you do anything like beyond like a 70-year-old grandma would do? Yeah, it's fine. It's my self-care.
well, I garden.
I have plans.
No, I'm not judging. Actually, I'm judging because I think it's awesome. I think that
Thank you.
yeah, I think that that's a perfect Friday night. But I'm wondering, like, are you a reader? Like, do you have books on the shelf that you're like, oh, this is like, I just need to sit down and turn a page? Is that
Yeah,
you?
I love reading. I've been a little bit of a nomad for the last couple of years. So I have books in storage in Portland, Oregon, in Brooklyn, New York, at my parents' house. Just, I prefer a hard copy, but I do use an app. I don't know if they have it in Canada. It's called Libby. And it connects to your local library, and you can download audiobooks and ebooks for free. Like it's a library system just virtually. So
What?
huge proponent of Libby. I'll talk to anyone about it who will listen to me.
Wow. Show notes or wherever we put that stuff.
I'll make sure I get that to you. I think being in New York, because I don't commute because I work remotely, but I do go on walks. I do try to get into the city, and like it's easy to listen to an audiobook, but I prefer a hard copy book. My challenge recently has been to like read more fiction. I feel like the work I do is heavy. I'm naturally trying to always like better myself, and it's really easy to find the books that are all
Right.
about self-improvement or politics or what have you. And so it's been one of my goals to read more fiction. I can't say I'm like succeeding, but I'm trying.
Do you have an author that you go to for light and easy?
The only reason I'm going to say this name is because it was the last book that I read, and her name's Emily Henry.
Okay.
And it's like, beachy romance type stuff. Like,
Okay.
I'm trying to embrace that light side, in addition to my puzzles.
I'm going to give you one of my favorite authors of all time.
Okay.
Is a guy named Carl Hyacin.
Okay.
And he's based in Miami, and he writes like mystery adventure, but his characters are so rich and vibrant, and you will relate to them in a whole bunch of different ways because they share the extremes of America. Right, but in the most ridiculous fun ways where you can be like, oh, I totally know that person. Like we think that's a caricature, but it's actually,
Yeah.
I just
It's
met that guy. But
5 minutes ago.
yeah, super fun. Great books and quick reads too. If you're looking for something just to distract your brain.
Yeah. Healthy escapism.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, Netflix.
Netflix. I'm not big on TV. I work in a lot of entertainment spaces, but I can't say I watch a lot of TV. My Netflix account got hacked one too many times, and then I just gave up. So if I had to like pick a streaming platform, it's like HBO or Hulu, but only because it's like the path of least resistance at this point.
Amazing. Oh my God. Okay. This is a stupid question.
No such thing.
But the type of pizza, because I'm fixated on
It's just a conversation I was wanting to have, honestly. Like, get me on a podcast to talk about pizza. I'm there. I'm your co-host.
Just share with me your perfect pizza, because I can't stop thinking about New York pizza right now. I'm sorry.
Okay, so this is going to be the hottest take you will hear. And I haven't been in New York long enough to like try everything, but Portland, Oregon has some damn good pizza.
I've heard this.
Right. And I will like, at this point, I would still go to bat for it. Like I spent almost 10 years in Portland. New York pizza is incredible, like absolutely incredible. But when you get to Portland, they have so many different varieties of pizza, and the food scene in Portland, like you can't survive as a restaurant if you have marginal food. Like you have to be like next level. So everything you have is so good, and it's also at an accessible price point. So I will say that there is like my favorite pizza on the planet in Portland, Oregon at Oven and Shaker. It's called the Spicy Salami, and it's a traditional like Neapolitan style pizza with spicy pepperoni, and then it has honey on the crust. And it's like the best thing ever.
Oregon just gets it.
They do. They really do.
Yeah.
Like I moved out there for work and I stayed for the food. Truly.
Really?
Yeah. People are like, how did you stay in Oregon for so long? I'm like, have you eaten there?
Oh, that's so cool. Wow. I just because they are, close, they're somewhat neighbors, but like the Seattle food scene I always found really good too.
We're really trying to pick fights right now between Seattle and Portland and New York and Portland. Like they just get bullied as a city. I feel so bad. Like I want to represent Portland in every way that I can.
Yeah, okay, I like that. All right, shout out to Portland.
Shout out Portland.
Shout out Portland. Okay, and again, the name of the place that we're gonna go get our pizza ordered from?
Oven and Shaker.
Oven and Shaker.
Mm-hmm.
Oven and Shaker. And the name of the pizza is the Spicy Salami.
Yeah, put that in the show notes.
All right. It's happening, man. Okay. I feel like a road trip is in order. I mean, I'm not that far away from
No, you should make it happen.
Yeah. All right. That's awesome. Thank you for going to bat for Portland.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah.
That's great. Have you spent any time there?
Not a lot of time, but more time in Oregon than I have in on the east side. Like I've done the West Coast a lot. Like
got it.
Yeah,
great.
I love Oregon. My dad went to university. Well, my parents went to university in Eugene. And, yeah, and we used to do runs, butte to butte runs. And we went to saw the sea lion caves in Oregon. Like we've done a lot in Oregon.
Fun.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever do Hood to Coast, that race?
No.
Okay. I think it's similar probably to butte, but it's from Mount Hood to the Oregon coast. It's like 200 miles. It's a relay.
Oh my God.
Sounds awful if I were to describe it out loud, but like it's a really fun race.
Oh, that'd be cool. Like our family did the Canadian Death Race twice as a relay.
I don't know what that is.
It's 125 120 yeah, totally. Katniss! 125 kilometers, 5 legs, or you could run it solo in 24 hours.
Oh my God. Okay, yeah, that's intense.
Yeah, it's pretty rad.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's cool. All right, Hood to Coast, is that what you said?
Hood to Coast. Yeah.
Hood to Coast. All right, I'm gonna check it out. Who knows?
Yeah,
Maybe I'll end up there. Oh, what else? Okay, so because I got to ask now, we know where your favorite part of America is. Do you have any other like hidden gems that you want to shine a light on? Or
like
the world?
The U.S., the world.
Yeah. Where do you like to travel?
Where do I like to travel? I'm a Sagittarius, like the explorer sign. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I've been really lucky with most of my work to either live in different geographies or travel extensively for different projects. I recently got back from Nairobi, Kenya, which was like an amazing trip. I was working on a refugee project there, like trying to take this really technical, nuanced program and bring like some human language to it of like what are we talking about and how do we meet this crisis with global displacement and things like that. But Nairobi was beautiful. I lived in Europe for graduate school and got to travel all around, like on a shoestring budget, which was, a different type of travel, was so fun.
Yeah, it's so fun.
And then a couple of years ago, like right after I had gone freelance, it was still, people were still pretty locked down with COVID. And I was like in my gray apartment in Portland for months on end. And I was like, I finally have a job where I can work anywhere. What am I doing here? And so I went to Nicaragua. Yeah, pizza.
Oh, cool.
I went to Nicaragua for like 6 weeks and just got an Airbnb, and that was wild. It was beautiful and amazing, and my first time really spending time in Central America. I had all intentions to like learn Spanish, but that didn't happen. But it was really, really cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy. Sirens in Brooklyn.
Sorry.
Oh, I love it. It adds to the texture of the whole thing.
Hey, we're here.
Yeah. This is legit.
Yeah.
Okay, so, oh man. When you said something that I found interesting in telling about the work, and I think it has something to do with humanizing or making the language approachable to humans, to take these highly technical or highly challenging subjects and make them so that we can understand them. What does that look like for you as a communicator? Like, how do you get there?
There's a couple ways, and I think the entry point into this conversation was storytelling and brand. And so there is a lot of work that I've done around what are the stories we consume in pop culture and what does representation look like. And so I think there's one avenue to have people understand nuance to cultures, or, TV and entertainment is often a means in which people interact with different races or ethnicities or subcultures that they wouldn't normally in their day-to-day. And so I think there is like a huge power to entertainment. And I do believe we're starting to see a shift in how people are represented, what stories are being talked about. No one wants to like turn on a TV to binge and be educated, but I do think, or maybe they do, but people usually turn on TV to be entertained. And I think that there is a really beautiful way that some production companies that I've worked with are weaving in social justice issues, but in a very like accessible way, or a way that resonates or has people think about issues in a way that maybe like the mainstream understanding doesn't hold.
Right.
So I think there's storytelling in that way. I also think that a lot of the communication strategies I lead are how do we bring just what we call like human English to issues, because some of the brilliant people I work with, they're in the academic space, they're in the government space, they're in the NGO space, and they're so technical in what they do, and they're experts and they're brilliant at it. Yeah. And so I come in and ask like the kindergarten level question, like what does energy for development mean? Or what is, just like not being afraid to ask the questions, because if I don't understand it, there's like a good chance that someone else in the room also doesn't understand it. Right. And it's not easy to do, right? Like the most sophisticated communication is the most simple. And I feel like the longer you try to write and explain something, like you're going to lose people. And just because it is like layperson language doesn't mean it isn't powerful. So really, I feel like using communications on issues that maybe seem a little bit far out or are issues that people haven't really thought about, like how do we both bring accessible language to it and also humanize it with stories? So if you can imagine someone in a situation and kind of build that narrative for someone to understand of like, oh, like you were saying earlier about the fiction author you were recommending, like you can put a character to something like an issue on immigration and understand that person's journey, then you don't see them as other, and you can relate to them in a way of like, oh, you are also a human having a human experience, and I can have more empathy and understanding instead of seeing you as, in the US there is such a harmful narrative around immigration, even though we are a country of immigrants. And like, how can we start to actually put a human behind these individuals or statistics or what have you?
Wow. That's kick ass, Shannon. Thank you.
I try.
That is an amazing answer. Holy crap. Oh.
You good? It's too early for a drink.
It's so fun. Oh, goodness. There's a part of this show where I love to ask every guest, there's these people out in the world and maybe they're starting their communications journey, maybe they're starting their consultant journey, maybe they've decided that strategist is the way to go. I don't know.
Depends on strategist.
But or they could very well be a storyteller that's about to take on a new story and they're not sure how to start. It doesn't matter where we frame this, but we'll call these people rebels in waiting. And this is the Wile E. Coyote moment where they step off the ledge and everything is fine. Then they look down and realize that there is no ledge anymore.
Yep.
So what would be your advice to those people? What's the Shannon O'Malley that we need to hear right now?
Yeah. I will first say, like, I actually have the same metaphor that one of my favorite humans on the planet went freelance in a year before shortly before I did. And she calls it on the limb. She's like, I'm on the limb, and like has these panic moments. So like, I think one is finding other people that are out on the ledge or on the limb to create community with. I feel like that has been fundamental to me being able to do what I do with support and confidence, especially if you're working independently, like just knowing you have a community of people who are also maybe having similar anxieties. But to the rebels, like, follow your intuition, follow what lights you up. Like I was saying at the start of this, like, this was never a career I had planned or I even knew existed, but I constantly was following, like, what am I passionate about? What is important and what needs to be done in the world? And this truly feels like my calling, and opportunities will come, and the money may or may not come, but like, the more you do what you're passionate about, the better you are at it. And then the money will come. And so, I think if you have a spark, like, continue to follow that, continue to flame that. And don't be afraid if you can't fit into a box. Like, I can't say I'm a nurse or I'm a graphic designer. Like, I don't have a job that makes sense to people. And I feel like that is something that people really struggle with, because they're like, oh, you take meetings and you do Pilates. Like, that is what my friends think I do. So, okay. And so I think just being comfortable in knowing that a lot of people won't understand, and that's okay. And as long as you are excited about the work and motivated to do it, like, keep doing it.
I love that. Where can people learn more about Shannon, and how would you like them to connect with you?
Yeah. So my website, my consulting firm is called Shan and with an ampersand. It's shanand.com.
Yep.
Yep. Email is great. Instagram is great. I don't have like a huge social media. I'm not an influencer. I'm maybe one day.
I feel that that's a little beneath your, where you're really at.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Although I will say you're now a Portland pizza influencer.
Yes.
So
I will accept that honor with such pride, and yes, that will make it on my grave.
Right. Oh, Shannon, what else you got?
That's it. Website, my email's on there. Feel free to reach out to me directly, especially if you are a rebel on the ledge and have questions. Like, I'd be happy to connect and give some encouragement or advice.
Amazing. Shannon, this has been outstanding. Thank you so much for the generosity of your time and your creativity, your intellect. Your view on life is just outstanding. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. This has been such a pleasure. And I look forward to when our paths cross again, hopefully in New York for some pizza.
Yes. Thank you so much for listening. I've been your host, Michael Dargie, and this has been the RebelRebel Podcast. It's a podcast for creative rebels and entrepreneurs all over the world. And hey, if you're a rebel or you know a rebel, why don't you head on over to the RebelRebelPodcast.com and fill out our guest request form. We'll get back to you within 24 hours, and maybe we can share your story with the world. Don't forget to like, share, or subscribe wherever you get your favorite podcasts. And thanks so much for listening. Until next time.